preaching from the Bible today. I know that's going to make some of y'all uncomfortable, and I appreciate your trust. And knowing that even though I am preaching from the Bible, I'm not going to say that anybody's going to hell, because Unitarian Universalists don't believe in hell. I have to say things like this, and it makes me mad, because some people in Unitarian Universalism are so traumatized by church that this is necessary. I'm not mad at you. I'm, just kind of free-floating mad about it. I'm also Bible preaching because my cousins are visiting today, and and one of them told my Aunt Mabel that I was here in Austin teaching the Unitarians about the Bible, and I wanted to make an honest woman out of her. Let me start with a poem by David White. It's called Loaves and Fishes. This is not the age of information. This is not the age of information. Forget the news and the radio and the blurred screen. This is the time of loaves and fishes. People are hungry, and one good word is bread for 1,000. My favorite way of looking at Bible stories is to see them as metaphorical language, to look at the story as if it were a dream, and then interpret the dream. What's it trying to tell us? And there are two stories that are put right together in the Gospel of Mark, and those guys didn't write the stories just kind of as they came to them. They were very intelligent, as you are, and they put things together for a reason. And so two stories are together, and here they are. Number one, John the Baptist was in jail at the king's house, Herod. He was kind of a king. It's called the Tetrarch. He was the flunky who was put in charge of Palestine by the Roman emperor. He lived like a king, and he had married in a kind of a weird way Herodias. I won't go into all of it, but John the Baptist had spoken out against this particular marriage. And so Herodias, Herod's wife, was mad at John the Baptist, and he was in jail downstairs. There was a big banquet going on upstairs, torches on the walls, and music and dancing girls and lots of food and lots of alcohol. And so, the kind of party it is. One of the things that happened was that Herodias' daughter danced the dance of the 7 veils, and Herod the king was so taken with his wife's daughter's performance that he said to her, "My dear, that was wonderful, amazing, and I would like to give you anything you ask for." Well, she, being a young woman, went to ask her mother what she should ask for. And her mother, not being a young woman, being a bitter woman of a certain age, who had been dissed by the prophet downstairs, said, "Ask him for John the Baptist's head on a platter." So she did. This is the reason why the director of religious education that I had in South Carolina, after having heard some Bible stories, because she was from California, had never heard any, I was training the teachers in how to teach the Bible, and she said, "You want us to tell these stories to the children?" Yeah, so John the Baptist's head on a platter was delivered to Salome, the daughter of Herodias, and his disciples came to bury him and to tell his family about it. And guess who was in John the Baptist's family? If you grew up in a Bible preaching church, you'll know Jesus was his cousin, Rabbi Jesus. So he heard about the death of his cousin. Next story. Jesus goes to be alone, to meditate, takes a boat across to the other side of the lake. And I'm imagining he's going to grieve and feel his feelings and pray and be quiet. People followed him, and he felt sorry for them, and he started healing their sick, which is not really a way to make people go away. So he was healing their sick, and he was talking to them, and they got hungry. They were out in the middle of nowhere, and the disciples came and said, "Rabbi, the people are hungry. You need to take a break from preaching," which is something that preachers hear a lot. Need to take a break and let the people eat something. And he said, "You give them something to eat." Well, this was pretty early in his ministry, and up until now, the disciples had just been following Rabbi Jesus around, watching him do amazing things. And that had been their job. They just kind of went, "Wow, look at that." And now, suddenly, he was saying, "You give them something." Totally different dynamic going on there. And they said, "We don't, nobody had, we don't have, it would take 200 days' wages to feed this crowd." And so he said, this is the thing. He goes, "What do you have?" "Well, we got 2 loaves. There's a kid over there who's got 5 loaves of bread and 2 fishes. And Jesus says, "Bring them here." And Jesus breaks the loaves of bread and breaks the fish in pieces and says, "Go hand it to the people." And here's the story. The story is that everybody got fed. 5,000 people who were there, as actually says 5,000 men, plus women and children. Don't think about it too much. It'll make you tired. 5,000 men plus women and children got fed, and there were 12 bushel baskets left over of food. So, did it really happen? Nobody knows. Nobody knows. Take it like a teaching story. I'm going to put the question of whether it really happened. Would 12 police from Los Angeles, if they'd been there with their notebooks, would they have written down that happened, that the food multiplied? We don't know. So, but the teaching story is sitting here in front of us. You have people gathered and they're hungry. You have 2 banquets side by side. You've got the banquet at the king's house, and people are hungry. What are they hungry for? They're hungry for power, and they're hungry to party, and they're hungry to do whatever they want to do. And the king is hungry to get his get his kingness on, and he has got to save face in front of all his guests gathered, and so he has to do something he doesn't want to kill John the Baptist, because he knows he's going to get a lot of backlash from the people about it, because John the Baptist is beloved out in the countryside, and he's just not that definite a guy. He just was forced into this decision. So the people are hungry at the king's house, and then the people are hungry out there by the lake, and they're hungry for wisdom, and they're hungry for stories, and they're hungry for teaching, and they're hungry for healing, and they're hungry, just hungry for food. The great poet Bruce Springsteen said, "Everybody's got a hungry heart. The people's heart, our hearts are hungry." And I love this passage from a detective novel by James Lee Burke. I don't know if you've ever read him, but he is a poet too. And I found some words that I think describe it. And these words are kind of in a Christian context. A preacher who is baptizing the main character in this book. Right after he comes up out of the river water at his baptism, the preacher says this to him: "You done been joined in spirit to God, to the earth, to sky, to water and trees, Jesus is your light, your sword and shield. There ain't no place in his kingdom you don't belong. You ain't never got to be afraid again. I think one of the things that everybody's hungry for is to hear that they've got a sword and shield, that they've got a place of belonging, that they ain't never got to be scared again. Whether it's your sword and shield might be Jesus or God or your higher power, it might be the truth, or it might be your knowledge, or it might be love. It might be any number of things, but you need a sword and a shield in this life. And you need to know that there's a place you belong, and you need to know, you long to know, when is the time when you don't have to be scared? Well, the most important part of the story to me, the second banquet story out by the lake, is where Jesus says to the disciples, what do you have? Pretty simple question. What do you have? And I think if this were a dream and the divine one, the spirit of life and love, asked me, what do you have? There are hungry people out here. What do you have? I would think, what do I have, number one? And then I would think, what expands when you share it? What are the kinds of things that this bread could be a metaphor? What expands when you share it? Love expands when you share it. Energy, if it's spent correctly, expands when you share it. You know, you try to rest, you try to conserve your energy. You sit on the couch, you watch TV to rest. You know that doesn't work. You don't really feel refreshed or energized. I know, because I've tried this over and over again. Sometimes I think maybe it'll work today. And blessings are also inexhaustible and energizing when you start giving blessings to everything. That's another sermon, but when you send good wishes to other people, and if you're in a native frame of mind, you even send good wishes to the plants, the trees, the animals, you keep sending good wishes out, and it kind of multiplies and makes you feel like a fountain of blessing. You know, there's a spiritual law that says there needs to be a flow. I've talked to you about this before, saying, you know, be a stream and not a swamp. There has to be a flow of things. There's got to be a flow of love. You can't hold anything too tightly. You've got to hold love loosely. You've got to hold all your certainties loosely. If you hold your certainties too tight, your life's going to break. And the universe will see to it. And if you hold your money too tightly, this is a sickness of our culture. We hold our money so tightly, and we don't want to let it flow. We even hold our old furniture and our old clothes. We're like, I'll use that again sometime. Don't take it away from me. I don't have to give away this dress that I ain't worn in 5 years. You know, I read once something that felt true to me, and that is, if you haven't used it in the last year or two, it's not yours. It belongs to someone else. And you should let it go to that person for whom it belongs, and they're probably looking for it at the thrift store. In Islam, there's even a spiritual rule called zakat, where you give away 2% of your holdings every year. Just let it flow, just to keep it flowing. And so the person who shared the loaves and the fishes, or all the people who shared their loaves and fishes, I don't know, maybe the miracle was that hungry people shared with each other, because everybody had a secret stash of maybe loaves and fishes, and they brought it out when they were shamed into it by this 12-year-old boy bringing out his. I don't know what happened. Again, that's not the question on the table, but maybe this is a story, a kind of an economic story. And certainly Jesus spent a lot of time focusing on economics. And there are some conservative Bible-believing Christians that we, you know, in our narrow view of Christianity, we think, oh, conservative Christians are conservative politically too. But no, there are a lot of radical conservative Christians, I want you to know. And they would see this story as a story of sharing the wealth. You know, you take what you have and you share it with other people, and you see who needs what, and you let it go, give it around. I think that is not a bad interpretation of this story, because Jesus talked about economics in another story. I'll tell it fast. The story of Lazarus the beggar at the doorstep of the rich man. And the story goes quickly like this. There's this hungry beggar covered in sores who is at the gate of the rich man. And the rich man lives in his mansion, and he is practicing trickle-down economics because he has great banquets, and Lazarus the beggar gets the crumbs from the banquet. So they just, they take the leftovers and they kind of scrape them out in the street, and they go, Lazarus, we're doing you a favor. And Jesus says, Lazarus died, and the rich man died, and the rich man's in this place of flames, which we don't believe in, but it's a place of flames. And Lazarus the beggar is in the place where God lives. And in the story, it's above the other place. And the rich man, who's hot and thirsty, says, can you trickle down some water from there to cool my burning throat? And if this were a sweet Unitarian story, we would say, and in heaven the heart of the beggar was moved, and he gave the poor rich man who now saw the error of his ways some water. No, that's not how it goes. He's like, too bad. This is just if the beggar were from Jersey. Which he wasn't, but I just was there, so. Okay, so I planned to preach on this story last month. I've got to turn my sermon topics into the newsletter early the month before. And so I forgot about God and the karma fairy, and how when I'm going to preach on something, I get tested on it the week before, which is so annoying. So I never preach on patience, for example, God forbid. So I'm preaching on sharing, what do you have, and sharing, and this no trickle-down economics, and feeling pretty good about it, helping those less fortunate. And then Friday night, the Occupy people get evicted in the rain, and I get a call. We're trying to find some housing for the homeless folks who've been partnering with us in this Occupy movement. They don't have any place to go. Can you all put up some of them? And I think, oh, man. I don't want to take a stranger into my house tonight. I don't want to ask y'all to take strangers into your house tonight. I'm not a young, naive minister who would do something like that anymore. I've done it in the past, not anymore. I want balance in my life. I want to give away, but I don't want to give everything. And I don't mind endangering myself, but I'm not going to endanger somebody I love. And the people I love have asked me not to endanger myself. And I don't want to put you all in that position. And so I'm just flummoxed. And I'm thinking Friday night, we have to solve this homeless problem right now. Because I see the Occupy folks, young, idealistic, interested in putting the spotlight of attention on the economic structure of our society. Is it broken? Is that why it's not working? Or was it structured like this to keep the poor poor and the rich rich? I have my opinions, but that's not what this sermon is about. And I see them getting bogged down, yes, I'm going to say it, bogged down with the homeless problem. And I'm mad because, I'm mad about another thing now. I'm mad because, just take a number. There's a list. Not at you. Because another good movement is it sidetracked? I don't know. They need to be working on corporate personhood and the evils of the banking system. And here they are trying to take care of actual homeless people who don't have any place to go in the rain and the cold. And so I think, what are we called to do here? We're called to share, but are we called to give away everything? How are we supposed to act in this situation? How would, for example, I was raised on the story of the Good Samaritan. You pass somebody in a ditch, you wrap them up, you put them in a hotel, you go back. But what if every time you go down the road, there's a guy in the ditch? Every time. Or what if every time you go down the road, there are 20 people in the ditch? Sooner or later, you're just going to sit down in the ditch and cry. What I'm telling you is, I would love to set up a system where we decide to share what we have with clean, pleasant, deserving, intelligent, and sane people only. And that's not going to happen. And so what do? I look forward to your input. I look forward to your thoughts about it. I look forward to this conversation. And if you could, solve the problem of homelessness by tomorrow, just please get to me with your idea and we'll see if we can't make that miracle happen. This is a miracle story. It's a small miracle of sharing, or it's a big miracle of matter expanding, or it's just a miracle that this many intelligent, calm, and full of goodwill people can have this conversation together. So I'm looking forward to it. And now let us sing together, because sometimes that's the best thing to do.